Welcome to another episode of Optometry Profits Revealed. I'm your host, Peter Precht, and today I am with Jacob Fromm. He's a 25-year veteran of the industry. He's an optometrist, a manager, and before we go through your bio, nice to see you, Jacob. Thanks for joining me.
Likewise. Thanks for the invitation, Peter.
Well, before we dive in, I just want to preface this by saying that we connected online. This is how we met a number of months ago, and we just had a brief call, and we share a passion for the technology that could be rolling through the eye care industry and optometry and the crazy roadblocks that exist. So we're going to dig into the mental aspects of this, and that'll be fun. But let's talk about your career. The 25 years you've been doing this, quite a while. You had mentioned that you started as an optometrist within the Pearl Vision and running several Pearl Visions. Talk about that experience and how long were you doing that?
Yeah, I'm an optometrist, and from Denmark, where I was both the optometrist and I was the store manager. So doing both the managing side of the business, but also attending to real customers and selling the glasses, which is common in Denmark.
Yeah, and all of our discussion prior to recording was a little bit eye-opening that is not uncommon. That's quite a few seats to fill, as to be running practice and also to be in the lane seeing patients. And but you talk to me, explain to me how that role elaborated into what we're going to spend a lot of time talking about, and that was you were largely an instructor and an optometrist, but you had 14 years with Essilor after the Pearl Vision time, teaching techniques to optometrists to utilize in the lane while with patients. That I think that's amazing. Please elaborate on it.
Yeah, I was the marketing and product director for Nordics, so Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, launching new products. And Essilor is good at innovative solutions and finding new technologies. But when I'm launching new products, I need the stores and the optometrist and the staff to understand the technology, and more importantly, translate that technology into something that the customer can understand. So Essilor is good at putting fancy technology logos and names like iCode or Wavefront 2.0 technology, which might resonate with the store and an optometrist once you have explained what it is, but it has no meaning for the customer. So I've been spending quite a lot of time thinking about how can I then translate that benefit of that technology into understandable language. So teaching that whole experience technology into the stores, but making sure that I also give them the vocabulary and the explanation to explain that to their customers.
Yeah, that's where the disconnect, I think, is genuine and very real. How do you explain technically a refractive situation to someone in a chair, or the benefit of like you talked about backside technology, of coating, polarized lenses, things like that. And again, a lot of times, certainly when you and I met before, there was times where we're looking at each other like, okay, where's the idea going to just formulate between our heads, because it's not an easy topic, because it gets into things like emotions and understanding and how clear communication really is happening between patient and doctor, which sounds very simple, but it gets compounded when you start talking about introducing new technology to that.
Yeah, exactly. And the worst part is we're trying to sell an invisible object. You can't see it, you can't demonstrate it. So everything is about explaining to your customer what the benefit is. So if you get this lens, you can see more clearly in the dark. That's the sort of level we need to translate that technology into. And based on that, it's also you're building some loyalty with your customer. They need to trust you. So you need to be very good at explaining those invisible benefits into something they can understand.
Right. Yeah,
Uh,
something that is well. You just said it, and it reminded me of that post that really sparked this entire discussion. Was we're selling something that's not there, so it comes completely back to something as nuanced as how you ask a question, um, how you listen.
exactly, and you need to translate the complaints from the customer or the feedback from their current prescription into something related to a new solution or new lens design. And then once you get that pain, it's easier to relate that into explaining the new design. For instance, if they having trouble backing out of their driveway because of distortion in the progressive lens, then that's the point you can take up and say we have a better lens. You can't say the name of the lens doesn't make any sense for the customer, but you can start to explain the benefit of that technology, saying it's more clear when you need to back out of the driveway, or you're less tired in the evening with this lens because the reading area is larger than what you had before.
Well, this is where it gets really cool because what you're talking about, opticians have been able to see actively in action. I certainly in the last 2 to 3 years with products like driving eyewear. Um, you know, we know Essilor introduced the DriveWear lens, but Zeiss has a Drive Safe lens. There's others, um, but that's a product people come in asking for. So the marketing has been vast and well, yeah, at all ends. In my mind, that's just one example. Can you think of another? But because that's to me that's direct evidence of what's happening in chairs across the realm. Eh, or am I wrong? Or patients leaving an eye exam and getting that on their own.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts
No,
on that?
no, I think it's when you get to that clear benefit and understanding and relation, because all customers can relate that it's difficult to drive. So driveware a solution for that. Um, they get it. Another example was I was trying to launch blue light coating for the first time. None of the stores had heard about it. It was not a request. It was not something they could explain.
Right.
Certainly, no customers were asking for it. So there's a lot of education when something new comes in, and you need to really onboard the stores. But once it hit online and some gamers started to use it for gaming advantages, that's where the real benefit and relation for the customers came in, at least for a segment
Well,
of the patients.
I think that's true, and then obviously there begins little spin-offs from that. Those that talk about not getting migraines,
Exactly.
and well, and again from a clinical standpoint, because of the articles in 22, 23, 24, something like that, there's a slew of articles that debunk the whole circadian rhythm thing, and opticians were like, screw you, blue light, because there were some that were just not going to deal with it from the beginning. I'll say that straight out. But the reality is, we've got patients showing up that want it. And if psychosomatically they are putting it on and they're not getting migraines and they can function in life a lot better, are you not going to provide that for them? Let's be real. This gets back to the strange gatekeeping conversation that's come up in other interviews that I've had. You know,
Yeah,
how you know some of these things are going to be that way. We know being in optics, there's going to be good, bad, and ugly of anything new that comes out. And part of the job of the industry is to kick the tires and be very critical. And I am totally on board with that. But where does that fine line break or shatter when it comes to patient requests and demand, education to optometry in the chair? You just talked about that, and I want to talk about that because you did that with Essilor, but you also did the same thing with Specsavers from 19 to 25. We talk about the differences between that role and Essilor, and also talk about the products that were in that discussion, because that discussion fascinates me. I think a lot of things are coming back to that discussion, the patient discussion with the doctor in the chair.
Yeah, similar roles, different portfolios. The main difference from SLO was I needed to create the market with the stores, have them choose the SLO products because they, of course, have several suppliers.
Mhm.
And Specsavers sitting at a head office deciding what should be available in stores, sort of remove that choice. This is what you can choose from store.
Right,
But
right.
still, you need to educate the stores because they can choose from different lenses, different price categories. So again, it's sort of the same, that if you don't make it clear and recommend and put words behind each lens that the customer can understand and that the store can explain to the customer, you don't get the right product sold, or you get one store explaining this lens this way and the neighbor can explain it a different way. And then you, from a chain or a supplier point of view, lose the position and the benefit of the products. If I leave it up to the store or to the optometrist to explain the benefit of this specific design, then we get 100 explanations. And then you can have one customer coming in complaining, and then even in the same store can give a different explanation to the customer. If we don't train them on the same explanation and the same benefits and the same outcome for the patient, and if you are all over the place, then we lose that loyalty with the customer into the store, and trust, and what do you call it, the mindset of the customer that you are a skilled expert.
And that can happen.
Mm.
Um, there can be great optometrists that have terrible ADHD, and they're all over the they're all over the place, and getting them to follow a sequence is good luck, man. But you know, it kind of that takes me to that point, because you're talking about uncovering, which is really a lot of what opticianry is about in the early stages of, you're with a patient, you're looking at a prescription, and what your job is to diagnose their life and where the product's going to fit into their life. And but that can mean something, or that can be said differently out of a patient's mouth in the exam room. Sometimes they're more revealing there, sometimes they're more revealing in the dispensary, but you are hitting on something that I think is very, very important in all of eye care, is that communication aspect. And as we see technologies that get introduced into the mix, and I might throw a curveball at you in the next minute or two, I'm going to warn you. It well, you know, there's products that exist that reach outside of the store, and they can bring patients back in with them using technologies on their phone. I've talked about this on many episodes before. I'm not creating it. I didn't just talk about it here and it just poofed out of thin air. This has been going on for quite some time, at least 2014, 2015. Long story short, people can get prescriptions from their phone. The industry has a very unique opportunity to capture them in many unique ways, you know. But but you and I are getting back to that in the chair, the questions to the patient, and how the similarities there, or the lack of continuity, can break down some of the introductions of new technologies. If you're not asking how it's going to impact their life, what is it? How do you justifying what to sell to them? and let's not even make it selling. How are you filling that part of the prescription of their life? Because that's what eyewear is. We're prescribing life back into people. Why aren't we thinking of it? I don't know how to. I'm sorry, I kind of went on a rant there, but that is important, and I think that we miss that. You understand selling something to someone that isn't there. So, how do you use that when you teach doctors?
Um, yeah, that's a good,
I
a
told
good
you, I
question.
told you I was going to throw a
Yeah,
hard one
yeah.
at you. I warned you, but I don't.
I'm thinking more about the technology overall, and again giving something value to customers so they can
Right.
experience your guidance and your expertise into this area. So I've been in, Specsavers are selling online also, and a lot of online solutions where you can get your glasses and you can get your contact lenses. If we look at the glasses and spectacles, my approach is that yes, you can get a standard single vision lens, which is not complicated to make. You can miss the PD and height, and it will still function.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Once you get into progressives, it's a different story. But I will still use it as a channel to drive traffic into the store and saying online, this is the standard solution. It's okay, but if you want the real personalized stuff, we actually need to see you in store. We need to make more complicated measurements based on the frame you're selecting and based on the conversation we're having.
Well,
So
that's what's missing is that patient conversation of what's going on in their life and how does because that's the easiest way to talk to technology.
exactly, but it also gives you as a storeman, as a store owner or optometrist, an explanation that you're actually providing something. It everything can't be solved online through ticking a box and making a simple eye examination. There is something to the profession. There is some knowledge. It's like going to the doctor. You can buy prescription online in Denmark, but that's only the standard stuff like headache pills and all of that, painkillers, simple stuff. You can't buy really high-end prescription for something more complicated. So a little bit like the same, explain to the customer that there is a quality difference, that you are actually having a profession and an education that can bring something else more than just a pair of ready-wear or online cheap solution.
I think I think that that's an area where just from the conversations I've had, that's an area where Europe is way ahead of the United States in my mind. Um, it you know there's no resistance to it's kind of strange in in America. That there's this there's this pervasive what's the cheapest or whatever. But you just described about a conversation that is you know talking in a proud way to the elite benefits of a higher end product, which is that makes it a lot more easier to relate it into anyone's life too. When you're talking about the elite aspects of not losing or lack of swim or any of that type of however you want to describe the compensated digital products that end up on people's faces. Sometimes that can be hard to understand from within the industry as well. So there's that's a whole other challenge that I feel like I could spend multiple shows on, like how to educate within with doc. Well, I think education should be taking place with doctors and opticians at the same time because that would be easier to tackle some of the dilemmas that we're talking about right here, some of the psychological dilemmas. I think when a doctor comes out with a patient, it should be talking in a way, there should be nuances or ways to communicate this person has these psychological tendencies, not criticizing them, but this is what you're dealing with. So I've been in places that do that, in a very subtle way. I didn't mean to cut you off, but please say what you were going to say.
No, no. When I was an optometrist, I did the examination, eye reflection, I found the frame, I sold them the lenses. So that was a whole. I did the whole thing, and
The whole
everybody was doing that. So there was no handover, but and that has its benefit, and you really get that connection, and you really understand, and there's no missing link or missing information. So if you can do that, that's the perfect customer journey. But
I think I
yeah,
think so. I think so too. But it does end up, putting you in a lane of understanding optician. Here in the United States, we segregate the opticianry part very succinctly from the optometry part, and the optometry and the insurance part are in the exam room, and the handoff takes place. But that there's some information that can tend to be maybe lost there. And
exactly. The Specsavers does the same way, where you hand over your customer. So there's
right,
a full customer journey and handover. But when I was doing a training of new lenses, the first I did one training and was going to the front staff, greeting customers. It was going to the optometrist. It was going to the people dispensing the lenses. And I said, "This is the training." And I was asked, "But don't you need to create 3 different trainings?" And I said, "No, no, no. One training. They need to know it all. We can do more technical optical training for the optometrists, but overall, they should all have exactly the same education, the same ways of describing the lenses, and it's not so all the deep tech optical discussions. We can take that to the optometrist who needs to know. But overall, the benefits, the way to explain the lenses, and the outcome for the patients, everybody should have that exactly the same, and that's linking into your doctor and optometrist, and yeah, having the same education, and meeting the customers at the same in the same way.
right. The same questions are asked, same things are answered. I know one of the critiques of the patient experience is that they are asked the same thing 3 different times. It's like, geez, do these optical people listen to me at all? And there's again, there are better ways of doing the communications and the handoffs. I know for me personally, in the optician role here, my job is so much easier when the doctor's done 80% of it. And I've been there where the doctor did everything, measured and everything, which sounds like your primary experience. So from your training, or from your past experience with us, specifically with Essilor and with Specsavers, you're teaching optometrists to uncover questions from the chair, and they're going straight into getting classes with the same individual after that.
In Specsavers, they were handing over to
Right.
dispensing,
Okay.
but in Essilor, if you have an independent store, it's typically the optometrist doing the same job, handling the patients throughout the whole journey.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so you really need to translate the benefit of that technology into something they can explain to the customer, but also exactly linking it into here are lens for driving at night because of this technology. So start asking questions in the beginning, in the when you're asking the patients about the feedback, to listen for those benefits.
Right. And even different, there's different kinds of questions that we would even ask today versus 25 years ago. Like what, things about someone's life. Well, back then you were reading a newspaper, and it's just kind of rare, or less frequent today. But those are, that's just a strength. That's just one small nuance of the changes that have taken place for individuals in that, and how fast technology hits and releases. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. But a lot of people, because it's your store and you want happy customers, you tend to stick to the same product because it works, and your customer are happy. And if there's anything wrong with the lens, you know exactly that it needs to be tweaked this specific way, and then it works again. So every
Right.
time you're launching a new technology, people are a little bit skeptic, and each negative feedback from the customers is perceived much worse than the two others that you just tweaked because it's a new product.
Wow.
So you need to overcome that step. And normally I say if your patient comes in and you say, are you happy with your current lenses, and they say yes, then you just give them the same, and then you keep your customers on old technology, and you're not really following all the benefits. But you need to dare ask the question and introduce something new. Otherwise, we will all be driving 4Ts because there was a great car, nothing wrong. It started, and you were happy until you come home and see that the neighbor has bought a brand new electric vehicle, and you were looking at, wow, my dealer never explained that there was something new. He just said, "Are you happy with your current car?" And I said yes, and I drove off in the same. So you're not really evolving if you don't dare to ask the question or introduce something new. You're
Right.
stuck on old technology.
Right. Well, and I have seen environments where listening has turned that. I've
Hmm.
seen environments where a manager has said to the owner, you know, this is the third time this has come up. What do you want to do? And what they're saying is, we're going to sell this. How do you want to sell it? You know? And, but again, here we are in that consumer lane. And I do, I mean, I don't expect you to have, the crystal ball answer to that, but, speak to that because consumers are doing their own gig in eye care. And I talked about it a few minutes ago. Um, I'm not going to stop talking about it because to me it's important that the independent community find a way. All communities, Specsavers, Essilor, Pearl, well, they're all under the same umbrella, but independent, online, you know, these need to be connected with professionals. And you and I have talked about bridge building, but but how does that take place on the ground in an environment that is moderately just, disrupted by, in my mind, consumer activity? Consumers are driving the changes, like I just said. That three different people that practice asked, so that finally the manager's like, all right, doc, how are we going to sell this?
Yeah,
Um,
but I think you need to embrace the technology. You can't hide for it. It will not go away, and consumer will find it. Like if you don't have an online e-store for your practice because you don't want to go online, great for you, but there are 100 other stores, so you need to at least show your presence because customers will not choose it just because you didn't choose it. So you need to be online, and you need to embrace the technology and use it in your store because, as you say, the consumer are there, they're looking for it, but it's how it's interacting with it, and it's how you explain the technology, and it's where you find the value for your store. So just like I said before, with you can sell the standard solution online, so you're present and you're driving that channel as traffic into your store. If you're not there and you don't embrace it and you don't want anything to do with it, you will miss the customer because they will just find another place online to go.
Yeah, and from a professional standpoint, it becomes this gray area of, okay, I want to accept the new technology that the patients are interested in, but I certainly don't want to get a pie in the face.
Mm.
I don't want to get a pie in the face from oh, this was claiming this and it really doesn't do that. And I'm running a busy practice. I don't have time to explore whether their stuff's true or not. All of these things are completely relatable, but you really, yeah, I think you put it beautifully. You said, look, you have to have a presence there. You have to be online somehow, some way. what better time than now to be between the patient and the device is getting the prescription from their phone, rather than just throwing a little tantrum on the floor like a 3-year-old and kicking your feet and saying, no, you're going to do it this way. You're not going to force consumers to do something they don't want to do.
No, exactly.
So quite frankly, you should be listening to consumers for the technology first, and then trash the technology if it doesn't work. If
Mm.
the consumers wanted it and there's something delivered that isn't meeting your standard, you've got the opportunity now to develop and hold that standard. Stop complaining about it and stop resisting, and dive in and say, you know what? Not everything's going to work great, but I don't want you using something. I care about you as my patient. See, to me, that's the message. When they want to be police or gatekeepers to new technology, the message to the patient is, how do I get it? It's not. It's not. I'm listening to you. It's, how am I going to get it?
Yeah. I'm thinking when I was at SLO launched the Visio Office, the measurement device, and so did a lot of other suppliers. It was all that was a new thing back then. There was a lot of resistance in the store saying, it doesn't measure correct, and it takes a lot of time, and I can do better with the ruler and my pen and all of that. But in reality, it was, I could see from the stores that implemented it and used it, they were selling better solutions. Their mix moved up, not because of the machine, but because of the time they took to educate their customer, the storytelling, the explanation that now we do something else and special. So it was not the measurement, it was the whole experience and the whole explanation of what you will get better lenses when I do this. So there was a clear relationship, and you can say, I don't want that technology because it's not good. But in reality, your customers love it, and you're selling more, and you're giving them more benefits.
Well, and and I guess the, you know, Peter Precht speaking to the entire eye care industry is, look, a lot of technologies were designed for you to succeed. They weren't designed for lies. You know, they're designed for you to succeed. And that, you know, so let some guard down and plug some of these babies in, because I think that the implications are huge, very significant in my mind. I do like to ask, you know, for over, and you know, you can handle this anywhere. There's two things that I do with each segment. I ask your take, or my guests' take on a good technology experience, a bad technology experience during the course of their career, and the other new segment that I've introduced is to tell an online ordering story. So tell me a good or a bad experience, and then also tell me an online ordering story if you've got one.
I think the Visual Office is a good experience from a technology point of view. That
Hmm.
there was resistance. Now it's
Right.
just common practice, and they can see the benefit. Some bad experience. There's been a lot of tries to display and explain how progressive lenses will look and feel for customers. I haven't seen anything that is really ticking the box, because there is difference between a screen or something than when the customer is actually looking through the lens. So that's still something in my mind we need to perfect. The funny part is that with all the stores I've trained, everybody ends up drawing on a piece of paper still as the best explanation, because it's it's not trying to mimic real life, and there's still some connection when you're trying to speak with your customers. It's eye to eye, it's you and I trying to talk about the lens, not some technology
Yeah,
disrupting.
I certainly don't look down upon it, as long as the individual knows what they're talking about. But you really bring up an interesting point. I recall when I very first understood what was supposed to be going on with digital lens technology and visual acuity booster point on the backside of wave technology. You know, so I got a small grip, but then when I went to see it in production, I just came away even more confused. And now obviously I'm raised in a time when lenses were put on a block and they were in a chuck, and we were you know
Mm,
wheeling it in and sweeping it. I mean, we were surfacing lenses, so you had a standardized front surface. You put the distance prescription on the back, and that was how your multifocals, in the progressive realm worked. And there was always lower periphery distortion. And ugh, I don't want to say this out loud on a podcast, but I think that all distortion, removing every speck of it with wave technology is, it's a little far reaching. But I think that maybe a better understanding or a better explanation that we could offer towards a patient to understand or explain the compensated lens that's on their face might help, because it's either going to get people to shut down, or they're going to be more interested to, okay, why is that, why would you do that, why would the doctor prescribe this, and then the digital fabrication compensate it to meet it in a different way. And there's a lot of variables, everything from vertex distance to PDs to materials and frame on face, and a lot of things, angles, panto, all of those things are brought into account. So again, once you begin talking the way that I just did for 5 minutes, you're losing 80% of the people. So how do we make this relatable and understandable when maybe we only understand 8 or 10 or 15% of it? And
yeah, okay.
I don't know the answer to that. We get Alexandra and her product, here, you sit down and make a version of what you do training opticians that just trains patients or something like that. But we joke about that, but that to me is very, very true. I think some of the tools that are used to train how opticians can uncover, in a dispenser, there's nothing worse than an optician looking at a steep prescription and going, "Oh gosh, this is going to be a couple remakes." Not with today's technology. Nothing should be. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but sometimes you are rammed into an environment where, like you've talked about a few times in this interview, where maybe your choices are limited because of who or where you're working, and that can be a dilemma for an optician. So, how do how again, it well, and just kicking this thing around, what comes into your head with the best ways to simplify this for patients? Because the progressives not working, that's the best response to technology not really delivering that I have heard. Because you're being very, very honest, and I literally yesterday spoke to a gentleman who's like, these progressives are not what I was told they would be. He's not it.
No. Um, when I build up the range in Specsavers and trying I try to put consumer benefits each time they moved up a step on price and newer design and newer technology, to really make sure that there is something for the consumer and it's something that we can explain and it's something that they can relate to. Yes, I'm happy to pay $10 more for wider field or less tired or something, whatever it was. So being very clear and deliberately skipping one or two lenses in between. They were still available in the range, but from a consumer experience point of view and explanation, that was the simple step to onboard the customer. So if you're an optometrist, you think, yeah, he's willing to pay that and he would like these benefits, but based on this, I will choose a different design. That was not on the list, but it was available behind because that was in the back portfolio. So, giving that clear benefit when you step up, you get this, and if you trade up to the next one, you get this understandable benefit. Makes the customer more willing to pay, and because they are happier because they have a clear explanation instead of this is the best lens. Yeah, and the neighbor said also that was the best lens, but there's no benefit. There's no image in the customer's head about what is the best lens for you. What is it? Is it driving the car? Is it reading? You sort
Right.
of need to name it, and they need to understand where the benefits are for them. So exactly, like your friend, this is the best lens, and the optometrist was thinking, yeah, for reading, and then he went out and drove at night and said, this is rubbish because there's reflection. So he was thinking about anti-reflective, and you're sort of talking not at the same level because you have something in your mind and the customer has something else. So you need to put words on what we're talking about, and your expectations needs to be aligned when you say this is the best. So put some words and some benefits on what you're actually talking about.
Or even perhaps talk about the life journey of the progressive. You know
Mm.
what it was what I was talking about with that standardized front surface to how it's changed to back surface, which is closer to the eye. There's a lot of benefits to that, and there's a lot of very simple things you could say to a patient to describe the journey and say, well, okay, here's your good, better, best, from 1988, but this is where we've come, and and then maybe that will make it a little more relatable to somebody who has had an unpleasant experience and is looking for something
Yeah,
of a
actually
little
also
better.
in the range, we were matching the design, so hard design, soft design. So in each price category, there are two or three lenses to choose from. But for the to support the stores, we put in this is a hard design. So if you're going to trade off from this design, choose this one out of the three because that's more similar to what your customer is coming from. So you're not switching up from a really soft design to a hard design. Then yeah, it's better technology, but the consumer cannot really grab. It's not perceived as a benefit if it's too big of a difference in the design philosophy.
See, these are specific nuances that I think you could deliver in a very effective way one-on-one as you consult, for an optometrist, because you've sat in those seats and you've been through what they've been through, which kind of actually puts you in a very different lane. Um, we had talked about how different it is here about, like a Pearl Vision is run by, there's an OD and there's a manager, and you filled both of those seats. That in your time there, that to me that's just a very different philosophy and thinking about the patient experience in getting eyewear in either country. It's pretty darn different. But you did mention that there's also a handoff takes place within Specsavers, so there is that handoff to the optometrist. Did you have a good or bad online story to share?
Yeah, I we started the online glasses ordering, simple in Specsavers, simple solution, single vision, sunglasses, and it quickly becomes really complicated customer journey when you need to add on a color, add on a tint, add on a coating, making your PD and all of that. So it's really difficult to. It sounds simple, but once you start to dig into all the different solutions, it gets complicated. If you don't, if you want to sell the advanced lenses. So again, that was where my approach come from, saying, yeah, we can make simple solutions online, but we have so much more in store. So come down and get the right prescription and some more support.
And again, here's an example of a very good intent, but there's
Mhm.
still so many things being left on the table because people aren't considering them. They become an afterthought. They don't mention it. Oh my gosh, I just started the blah 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 taking this class because I'm going to sell insurance or whatever. And hey, that's a different life. and you're taking a test and you have all these other things going on. You just talked about tinting and coatings and how you can't be changing that after the fact. All the more reason for there to be an independent optician or a Specsavers optician involved in that online experience. So you plug it in, you get a recording of that experience. It's exactly what we do at IC Clearly. It's how we document what's going on. So, there's a perfect example of online in a corporate environment that would benefit tremendously, or where you describe the grind is here's a solution in place for it. So that's why we're having these discussions, and hopefully these are open some opportunities to plug in the right way so that it can serve whomever. The truth is, people want to order online. The truth is, they don't know what they're doing.
No, it's easier to sell the contact lenses online because then, especially if it's branded. But what I can see is that you just get customers shopping around for price. So there's no loyalty, there's no connection to your stores. You need to build something more than just price, but also taking care of your patients. They need to have an eye check once in a while uh, to be healthy.
That's the inherent abuse with that. That's the
Mm.
inherent abuse, and it's never gone away. The industry hasn't figured it out how to stop it because let's be it. Let, let's cut it right to the core, and this is where things get ugly. If somebody's wearing a -8, and they're on the road, and their contacts are back home, and they haven't had a eye exam in 4 years, I'm sorry. I want them wearing their -8s. I don't want them trying to get functioning through, especially if they don't have glasses, or you know what I mean. Like, but I don't have an answer for that because it is totally abused with online ordering, and I don't think the industry has much of an answer for it either.
No, I think what's working, especially in Denmark, where every contact lens is sold on a subscription, almost everything. So they get that connection into the store. They get them by mail. They don't have to order it. It comes regularly once a month or once every 3 months, and they get called in for checkups. So with the prescription setup, you actually get that loyalty, and you give them the free check, and you make sure that they come in. If they don't visit your stores, they you stop the shipment, at least. So
I think that that's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, there's at least an instantaneous way of saying, you're not gonna go 4 years without an eye exam. This is how we do what we do, and and I think that most contact lens wearers that have worn them for any duration have had a bad experience, so they know and they go. A lot of them don't really argue it and fight it. They know that they're inserting a medical product into their body, and they get it most of the time, not all the
not
time.
all.
But hey, if we can narrow it down to the exception to the rule, then I think that we're winning, and in that case, that's a really sharp model. I wonder if a 1-800 contacts is able to offer something like that. And obviously, we have like ABB and whatever. You have the big distribution houses where I don't know how they ultimately deal with that, but what you just described seems to be the best answer to that very problem. And you know, and again, I can't talk enough about how. First of all, I think it's amazing. I think you're very unique with the fact, that, from my view, that you've sat in both seats where you've managed teams in stores and territories, and you've also spent a fair amount of time in the lane and also teaching optometrists in the lane about that communication part between patients, their lives, what you're doing there, why it's happening, and and the realization that you're selling something that doesn't exist is something I think. Well, you and I, it resonates with you and I, but I think that you and I need to up our games to find a way of making that relatable to the optician talking to a patient. You know, when a patient, understands that you are, in many ways, you are literally going poof, and there's a set of glasses for you. I mean, you know, it's magical when you're 4 and you're getting your first set of minus twos, but and for all of us, but it, that needs to be relatable. And I talk about this here too. Something that gets away from us that have been in the industry a very long time is that the day that someone gets a prescription is a terrible day for them. We're all excited about what they can get. It's like, come on, people. This is not a good day for them. And that needs to be relatable. And we need to get that. And, there's a a gentleman locally here who has been in the industry forever. And he talks about how bad opticians are with that. And he also talks about, you know, the need for the optician that is able to talk with someone who is going through macular degeneration and it's not going to get better. Or they're dealing with diabetic retinopathy and it's not going to get better. And that this needs to be a skill that's taught too. The human components aren't cookie cutter. You can't generate them from a damn phone. You can't produce them with AI. So how you and I relate this message going forward, I think, is critical. And the people that we bring on board to carry that forward, to me, it's the defining moment of how the industry proceeds with humans or without them. And I don't mean to make it sound so scary, but we're here, we're living it, and prescriptions from phones is here. So how the industry wants to deal with that is up to the industry, but you need to know that you have the rare opportunity now to place yourself in that with professionals remote engaging as opposed to being reactive like we've almost always been. um, I just want to I know we're kind of throwing this in at the end, but talk about your experiences, if you've had, or what you had experience wise with myopia management, because we really didn't get into that, and I don't want to open a whole ugly can of worms, but I do want to say from a lens technology standpoint, um, I'm very happy to see technology stepping into place, not just for people to capitalize on something, but for us to stop something that is obviously made. I mean, why people compound so terribly into double digit myopia prescriptions is not okay. And if we can curve that in any way, I think it's awesome. So please speak to that. I'm just curious what your thoughts are, since we, you know,
I'm with you on that one. It's a great product that can help save some kids going
right.
forward. But we are moving from, and I think that's the difficult part with myopia management, that it is managing and it is a treatment rather than a one-off solution. It's not a quick fix. This is something that you need to visit every year, and we need to track, and so it is a treatment that, and that's a different way of thinking in the store. And I can see that the stores who knows how to take that conversation, because that's also a really difficult conversation with the parents. Look, you're -8, you're -7, the kid are going to be -7 or 8 still if we don't do something. So that's a different conversation than just taking a refraction and saying, here's a new pair of specs. Um, and we're entering into the treatment. So I can see the stores who is succeeding with that is where everybody's store is focusing on finding those kids and parents, and they talk about it consistently. It's not just the optometrist. It's not just the dispensing optician. It's all of them in the store that has that attention. And the stores that doesn't succeed is where you only have one person, or they don't really care about it, and it's don't understand the product and don't understand the treatment side of it. So I think it's exciting product. It brings that loyalty. It brings that personal connection to a whole family. But you need to think about it differently in the store.
Well, you just brought up a really cool scenario. Imagine if you are two parents that are very myopic, and you can if you can curve some of that with your developing child, that's empowering. I mean, that to me, that, well, first of all, it can be game changing. you know, to elaborate on that day that person gets a prescription, how bad it is. It's, you know, we tend to, from the outside in, we think of it medically. Oh, look, there's nothing wrong with you. You're going to be okay. But the realization is they know they're never going to look different. They're never going to look the same. And what I mean by that is they're never going to look out and see the same. And how they fix that is going to make their face look different most of the time. I mean, most of the time they're not initially going to be, diagnosed and getting contacts. Well, sometimes that they are, but that it's not. It's usually going on a little earlier than that. Which is, you know, again, thinking the consumer perspective, I think is, to me that's what keeps coming through as we talk. The How can this relate to a consumer in a little bit more clear way? Um, and I think the industry has a long way to go. But at least we know that is, not just from this dialogue. This has come up before. This is an issue that isn't going away. So how the communication takes place, not just between optician and patient, or optometry and patient, but the patient that's gathering information on a very basic level. Because as soon as they start talking about, getting out a prescription, they're getting pings on their phone. They're getting notified. Everybody's listened to. When you say to your wife or whatever, oh, I got to get an eye exam. It's that stuff starts showing up on your phone. That's the world that we live in. So we know that, and take advantage of that. Like we said, there's been a lot of scary experiences for optometry, but this is the best time ever to be diving head on into these technologies so that you can be involved. You know, it doesn't. No one's taking things from you. Right now, it's introduced to the consumer so you can be involved. Consumer can go around you. I think that's the scariest thing about the time right now is that there's an active presence of people getting prescriptions and PDs and buying online, and there's a profound lack of dialogue about it. So,
Yeah, but I'm thinking what you said actually. The technology is only taking something away from you if you don't embrace it or investigate or take a stand on it. Then it will take everything away. As soon as you understand it and take an active decision to do something or can explain it to the customer, then it's not going to take something away from you. You're building on it instead.
well, and talk to the experts. People like you and I are more than happy to have one on one with a practice and draw those lines in the sand so that it's not scary, ugly, and gross. Here's the best directions to take based on the principles that I get coming from you, because they're not all the same. As soon as you consult with a practice, you understand that they're run very differently, and it's different things mean more to different practices than others. And sometimes it's just so patient oriented. There's not even like an identity. It's very clinical, but you know, at least you know that, and that can help you as far as how you're going to address any problems, or fix any potential problems, or better yet, connect. Find ways of connecting in the best ways that are appropriate for your patient base. You may have a patient base that's largely texting. Well, make sure you reach to them that way. Don't reach to them a different way.
No, but the good thing about it, and I agree, the good thing about optometry and optics is that as soon as you start talking to your patients and giving them just a little bit more explanation, there's some interest. It's their vision, it's their everyday, so you can unlock it. If you don't talk about it, you don't unlock all of that. But as soon as you start to unlock, just like the Vichy office example, they start talking, they start to relate, and then they're willing to pay for that right solution rather than something cheap. So price is not the issue, and you build that connection and you show them your expertise, and they relate to you, and you have a customer, and they will come back to
Well,
you.
right. You've laid the foundation for a relationship because, like you said, it's based medically on how they see
Yeah.
and that's everything. You know,
Yeah,
it
and I
should
was thinking about
should
in
be.
the supermarket in Denmark, you can do everything online on your phone, and you can scan as you go through, and it's a cheap price, and you scan everything. I hate the supermarkets where I scan everything, but they're high priced. It's like, okay, either you service me and provide me with an experience and some service, and I pay higher price for my groceries, or I go to the cheap store, do everything myself, and get a discount. So my point is, you can't charge high end pricing if you're not.
City wolves. Sorry.
You can't charge high end price and compete with online if you don't provide something for your customers. They need to feel the service. They need to feel the experience and expertise.
I completely agree. You know, there's places that I go specifically so I can grab the produce. I don't, you know, I want to grab it and see it. You know, I mean,
Exactly.
it's yeah, and and that is a trade off. You know, if you want to get it covered in plastic and scanned, you can do that too. You know, but it's it, hopefully the trade offs aren't based on quality. You know, hopefully they're based on quality of life. Because I know, like the tool that I keep referring to, getting a prescription and getting measurements, and from your phone. It's not the answer. It's not the end all be all. But the other thing that I think the entire industry is missing is that it gives life back. You know, if you're a young couple and you've got two kids and you got an eye exam set for Saturday, there goes your Saturday. You're not doing anything else. You're not. And people want their life back. So if they could do preliminary stuff and speed that chair up and get out and actually have the second half of Saturday to the family, good Lord, industry, give that to them. That's why they want to do this. They don't want to just go for the cheapest thing. Stop. No, 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 no. They want their life back. And, I really hope that that's something that begins to sink in. Because to me, technologies do give things back to people as long as the professionals are implementing them and have their hands in it. That's to me, that's everything. Well, geez, we've gone an hour. Is there anything that you did not get to that you would want to input right now? I do want to say that we will include the links to get a hold of Jacob, for any consultation needs, and certainly the links to the product I've forgotten the name about that you just mentioned. I'm so sorry.
The, no, no, no. You are very thorough, and we have covered a lot of stuff. So I think I don't
I,
have any
we
questions.
we have. I've been waiting for this, and I'm really glad that you were able to sit down with me. To me, this is an incredibly important topic, and the the nuances of patient care through the patient experience and introducing technology into that. That's what we're here to do. So this has been a great conversation. So thank you again for another episode of Optometry Profits Revealed. Thank you for being here, everybody. Don't forget to do the profit growth quiz. We'll include the links to that and the links to get a hold of Jacob as well. Thanks, everybody. Take good care.